Hello, everybody. You have tuned in to the Indiana State Police Roadshow. I'm your host, Sergeant Rich Myers with the Indiana State Police District 52 Public Information Office. We thank you for joining us here today. We want to thank the Indiana State Police Alliance and the Indiana State Police Alliance Cops for Kids, a subsidiary of the Indiana State Police Alliance, for their continued support of this show. And we want to thank Tom Trial for putting us on YouTube each and every week and behind the scenes. And I'll actually have to get Tom on here sometime so you can see what a good-looking guy he is.
Mr. GQ himself.
He is. He is GQ. You look up GQ magazine, and there's Tom's picture. And the voice you hear in the outside there is a former host, Captain Dave Burson. Captain, thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me here today. I'll tell you, I didn't think I was going to make it. We had the day of service today for Gleaner's Food Bank.
Okay.
And a whole bunch of us from state agencies all across. I can't name them all, but many state agencies, including state police. So just left the warehouse a little bit ago. So that's why I'm in my Colts blue, like everybody else was, and not in my other blue.
And my excuse is we had EOD training. I'm on the bomb squad for the state police. Also, we had training, so that's me. That's why I am. But my other guest,
excuse.
I don't know what's Andre's excuse, why he hadn't got his uniform on. Andre Clark is with us today, and he's our other guest here. And Andre is the director for Indiana Missing Children and Endangered Adult Clearinghouse. So we've got a whole show worth of information here that I think everybody's going to find very, very interesting. And I was glad to have Andre come in today. Thank you for being here, Andre.
It's my pleasure. I'm more than happy to come over anytime you need me to.
I appreciate you being here. And one curveball we have already thrown at Andre. We didn't tell him it was videotaped.
No, we didn't. So just stare at the camera.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we want to talk about the Indiana Missing Children and Endangered Adult Missing Clearinghouse for Indiana. And probably a lot of people have never even heard about this in Indiana or know what it is. So let's start out there. What is that?
Okay, the Clearinghouse was enabled through legislation passed some years ago. Every state in the U.S. has a clearinghouse.
Okay.
And those clearinghouses may serve as a missing children's clearinghouse or a missing persons clearinghouse, but all states have them. Mm-hmm. Within Indiana, the Missing Children and Endangered Adult Clearinghouse serves basically as a safety net organization. Now, what I mean by that is law enforcement officers are well aware that by Indiana code, they have certain things they have to do whenever they take a missing child or a missing endangered adult report.
Right.
If a member of the public feels that law enforcement is not properly pursuing their case, one of those type cases, then they can contact the clearinghouse and we'll look at it and we'll determine whether or not all of the laws required to be followed by law enforcement for that particular case have been followed, and we'll even offer assistance if necessary to the agency that's handling the investigation.
Now, you work with the state police on the clearinghouse. Is that all states across the nation? Is that a state police function, or does that vary also?
It varies by state. Within some states, the clearinghouse is located under the Attorney General. Okay. Under others, the emergency management section of the state. So it varies from state to state, but most are with law enforcement agencies.
Do you find that the amount of attention that you get and the amount of information varies from case to case from a law enforcement section, or is there a certain criteria that you have to have?
We have access to case information on all missing children reports and missing endangered adult reports throughout the state. Okay. So we get all of the information that the law enforcement agencies across the state actually enter into the law enforcement automation system that we all use.
And that is, I'm guessing, IDAX, NCIC?
Correct. IDAX, Indiana Data and Communication System, NCIC, the National Crime Information computer system. Mm-hmm. Both those systems talk to each other constantly, and through those systems, any law enforcement agency in the U.S. can have access to any case that's active within Indiana, or for that matter, any other state.
So that's a good area for law enforcement to have as a pool to say, hey, we're looking for this person. Maybe you've seen something from another state across the nation.
Sure, of course.
So do you get a lot of those? Do you get a lot of inquiries?
We get quite a few. The Clearinghouse also operates an 800 number. It's a nationwide 800 number that can be used by the public or even law enforcement. The public can use it to make inquiries about missing persons cases. They can also use it to report information to the Clearinghouse on individuals that are missing and they think they have encountered. And we will then take that information and pass it on to the agency that's conducting the actual investigation.
Okay.
When we get a call from law enforcement, quite often law enforcement finds that a case they are working goes outside of Indiana.
Right.
And since we have connections, i.e., our counterparts at other states,
Right.
we can extend any investigation into another state to have that state's law enforcement assist us as necessary.
Now, the missing children is pretty much a given. If it's a missing child, they're going to go into that. What criteria do you have to have for an endangered adult? What do they have to fall into to say this person needs to be placed in that?
Right. When Indiana code was established for missing endangered adults, it put out a pretty strict listing of what a missing endangered adult consists of. And it's quite a long list. And what we've done within state police is we've clarified that a little bit for agencies to help them understand what a missing endangered adult actually is. The legislation is primarily meant to help in those cases where individuals have mental illnesses,
Okay.
such as Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia, that make them incapable of returning to their place of residence without assistance from law enforcement.
Right. What about medication? Is that part of it? If they're off their medication and can't be found, would that fall into
Yes, that would also, as long as we can get authentication from a medical authority that it's necessary to assist in the case based upon that fact.
Yeah, I understand. Well, again, you're listening to the Indiana State Police Roadshow. Sergeant Rich Myers with the Indiana State Police District 52 Public Information Office. I'm your host. Captain Dave Burston and Andre Clark are here with me. We're talking about the Indiana Missing Children's and Endangered Adult Clearinghouse. We've kind of talked about the missing children and endangered adult side of it. You got something else that you handle, too, the Amber Alerts.
Yes, we handle the Amber Alert program, the Silver Alert program, and the Blue Alert program.
So the Amber Alert, let's talk a little bit about it.
Okay.
Because that's the most been used the longest, correct?
Correct.
And that was established why?
That was established in response to a missing child case, and actually a missing child abduction that occurred in Texas some years ago.
Okay.
As a result of that case, the Amber program was formed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Young lady's name was Amber.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
And then the Amber program is actually a federally directed program. The federal government basically directs how the program should run within each state, but the states run the program themselves.
Okay.
So there is no nationwide Amber Alert program. If there's an Amber Alert declared, it's state by state.
Okay. But it can go from state to state.
Correct. We quite often have an Amber Alert that we have to request another state extend ours into their state. Happens very often.
So it's administered by the federal government?
Directed
by the federal
Yes.
government, but the states administer it. So is there different criteria for each state?
Unfortunately, yes. What the federal government has done is they've recommended criteria.
Okay.
Now, each state has to modify that recommended criteria based upon its state laws. Specifically, one factor is what's defined as a child in your state.
Okay.
So, for example, in Indiana, a child is defined as anyone under the age of 18.
Okay. So anybody under the age of 18 can fall into that in Indiana.
Correct.
And Dave, question for you. I know working with PIO and with you, we've been involved in quite a few Amber Alerts, and you have been involved in a lot more than I have throughout my career. But seems we always get the question, why wasn't an Amber Alert put out on this one? And why was it put out on this other one?
Yeah, and that's a great question, Rich. And it comes back to kind of what Andre just started touching on. There's really 4 criteria that we're looking at. One is that the child is under the age of 18, that Andre just mentioned. Mm-hmm. The second one is that the child is believed to be in danger of serious injury or bodily harm or death.
Okay.
The third requirement is that there will be sufficient information to make the broadcast worthwhile. And the fourth requirement is that the agency of record, whoever's taking the report, calls and requests it. But probably the one that we stumble around with the most and the public has a hard time understanding is what makes the broadcast valuable.
Right.
And I've had this conversation with a lot of people before. They said, well, you have a description of the child. I said, okay, we have a 12-year-old female, blonde, Caucasian, 5'3", and 120 pounds. How many children have I just described? So we're not talking about the description of the child. That's important.
Of course.
We're talking about potential suspect information. Is there a named suspect? Is there a description of the suspect? And is there a vehicle description and potentially a license plate number? Those are the things that make the broadcast valuable.
And of course, the reason we're looking at that again is kind of what I refer to as don't cry wolf.
Oh, exactly so. And we have had some cases, and don't ask me the specifics, but in general, we have had some where we've had issues with parent custody issues.
Right.
And a parent will make a false accusation that their spouse that they're getting a divorce from or estranged from is going to harm the child. And in reality, that isn't true. Mm-hmm. We have also had them where that is true.
Correct.
So it's damned if you do, damned if you don't, as we look and we study each one of these. So it's not totally a cookie cutter. We do look at the merits of each individual investigation as we go through it. Probably the one that sticks in my mind the most was a young lady down in southern Indiana. People wanted to know why we didn't issue an Amber Alert, and it took 3 days before the Amber Alert was issued. And the reason it took 3 days is it took that much investigation to develop information from talking to people in the community to determine, day 3 of the investigation, they say to develop information on a pickup truck, on a suspect, a description, and that information comes out. Tragically, the young lady, the little girl involved with that was found deceased, and as we continued the investigation, it was determined that she had been murdered before the original missing person report had even
before
been
they'd even
filed.
been contacted.
But the only good news, I can't even use the word good news, the person responsible was found and was convicted, but that doesn't bring that young lady back to life.
And again, we've got to have this because Andre could probably better answer this. I'm sure we get missing children every day.
It's correct. Over the course of a year, we process within the state generally about 11,000 missing child reports every year.
Yeah.
Now, the key point behind the Amber Alert program is, and in fact, most of these alert programs, is we want to get the public to become the eyes and ears of law enforcement, to give us the needed information to find and recover a missing child that we think is endangered.
Yeah, and that's the very important thing. Again, I think that's kind of what we were stressing. We don't want to put out so much information every day, every time that people just become immune to it.
And there are some states that say they'll issue an Amber Alert anytime a child is missing under any circumstance. And the point that I make out, and Andre just said, 11,000 a year, that works out. If we averaged it out, it would be an Amber Alert roughly every 47 minutes.
Wow.
So now imagine your favorite TV show being interrupted every 47 minutes. People would tune out. They wouldn't tune in.
Yeah.
They would tune out, and it would defeat the purpose. So it's got to be focused.
Yeah. Well, guys, hey, we've run out of time already. Can you come back next week? Can we continue this?
Certainly.
Sure.
Yeah.
Why not?
Great. Okay. Well, hey, we're going to continue this talk next week because we got a lot more information that we didn't even get to. So we're going to bring this up again next week. But again, you've been listening to the Indiana State Police Roadshow with Rich Myers. Dave Burston, Andre Clark, we're glad to have you with us. Tune in again next week. We're going to have some more on the Missing Children's Clearinghouse and some Silver Alert. Be with us next week. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.